It's time.
It's time.
And now, it's time for Herman and Sharon.
I love
Hi,
you.
everybody.
Thank you for joining us.
That's right.
Do you realize how important you are?
They should.
I mean, this is such a blessing that with about 500 choices, you decide to park here. But let me tell you something. The mind that you will have following this program will be so superior to the mind you would have if you watch secular television.
That's why they tune in. They want to increase their brain power.
That's good. That's good because
Increase their mind.
the guy we have today is so extremely intelligent.
Yes, we have had him on several
I
other
know
times,
it. I
but
know it. I know it.
you know, we always like to have him back. His name is Charles Crismier. He's founder and president of Save America Ministries. He was a former trial lawyer.
For 20 years.
Yeah. And he has pastored now for 30 years, and he brings prophetic word, which is what we need in our troubled world
And
today.
warning our troubled world, and he does all of this also on daily radio.
That's right. He has a
His
radio program.
Viewpoint.
Viewpoint is his radio program.
And his latest book, you need to have. There it is, right on your screen.
There it is.
He is actually physically here.
Which is always good.
And his wife,
is usually physically here, but she isn't
yes, he is having her spend time with the family, right?
Right.
Isn't it? It's kind of interesting. She's the same way. Is our wives love their kids, the family, everybody around them, the smell of cooking, all of that.
today.
They
We kind of
love
like that too.
Well, Kathy has always enjoyed being with you all. We
Yeah.
feel like it's a family
I
reunion
know
when
it.
we get to come back here.
I know it, and we appreciate her so much. But this book, how long? I mean, you must do a lot of research.
Well, I have done a lot of research. Interestingly, in some respects, the book is a compendium of 20 years of gathering information, collating it, bringing it together, and then adding to it the developments in the last few years. And they are just almost spinning out of control right now,
Yeah.
the developments that are taking place even in the last few weeks.
When you were a trial lawyer, just walking back a little bit, were you bombastic, or were you just that kind of in the groove, this is the case, and you just state it and let the jury figure it out? What kind of a guy were you?
Well, I guess it would depend on who you ask the question. If you wanted to ask the question for opposing counsel or the party on the other side, they may have thought that I was more bombastic. On the other hand, I tried to evaluate cases and the information, the evidence that was before me, and bring it to bear in the most persuasive manner. And actually, Herman, that's exactly what I've tried to do in this book.
I was going to say that there's a correlation here.
Oh, there is a correlation. I don't think I could have written this book if I had not previously practiced law.
Really?
Amazing. Because you know how to get the detail that most people would probably overlook, or maybe they would not understand what it's saying.
Well, sometimes it's not just a matter of the detail, it's being able to connect the dots of the details. And that's what's been missing.
Let me start
in our
this.
lives.
He who rules the Temple Mount rules the world.
Yes.
Okay? I had out of a book that I had, and I had David do a aerial view in this book, and right there it is. You can see the monitor. See the Temple Mount? And that's where Solomon's, and that line down the middle is actually, it's 2 pages there. But that's actually where Solomon's temple sat.
Yes.
Now, how did we lose that ground? Actually, Moshe Dayan, right, gave away that?
Indeed, he did. He was not spiritually minded.
He was a secular Jew.
secularly minded, and therefore the Temple Mount meant nothing
Nothing
to
to
him
him.
in comparison with an elusive promise of peace. And so he said, well, we'll just turn it back over to the Muslims.
Thinking that
And-
would create a
Exactly.
response of peace.
Exactly. And it created just the opposite. Because there's a fundamental rule in Islam, understanding in Islam is once they have owned or possessed a particular piece of ground, a particular town, a particular nation, it is forever Islamic. Wow. Therefore,
Wow, yeah.
several leading voices from the Islamic world, different countries, have already declared that Jerusalem will be the capital of the Islamic Caliphate. Jerusalem, not Mecca, not Medina, not Tehran, not Ankara, not Cairo, but Jerusalem will be the capital of the Islamic world. Now, if that doesn't get one's attention,
Yeah.
I don't know what will. But you won't hear it in the news media.
No.
When you put this together, why is the Temple Mount the focal point in this book?
All right. The first 14 chapters tell that story.
Yes, that's a lot.
It is a lot, but it's necessary to lay it out progressively throughout human history. And the Temple Mount is the place, it was called Mount Moriah,
Yes.
the place where Abraham was called to sacrifice his son of promise, Isaac. And God, in fact, specifically pointed out the place to him. So it says that when Abraham got there, he knew what the place was. It wasn't just any place, it was a special place that God had chosen. So Abraham sacrifices his son, or at least was willing to do so. God provided himself a ram or a lamb there, and because of that, God eventually was able to sacrifice his only son on the very same place. And this is the place where God chose to place his name there. Jerusalem and the Temple Mount, Mount Zion, Jerusalem, the place where God himself chose to place his name there. Now you can well understand then, if God chose to place his name there, then his arch enemy, formerly Lucifer, now we refer to as Satan or the devil, the prince of darkness or whatever, he also, in his desire to become king of the mountain, to ascend to the heights of the north, to be like the Most High God, must, from his viewpoint, must ascend to that mountain and take control of it.
It's interesting when you go on a tour to the Holy Land, and the tour guide, when we were coming out of Egypt, remember, and we changed buses and so forth, we had a tour guide, and he says, now we're going up to Jerusalem.
Yes.
That term, when he said it, I thought, isn't that interesting? Up, not down,
Right.
up to Jerusalem.
And wherever you are in the world,
Yeah.
it's always up to Jerusalem. Interestingly, it's not a high mountain. Not really.
No.
I mean, I've climbed mountains. I've climbed most of the 14,000-foot peaks in the Sierra Nevada in California.
Really?
And that's a whole nother story,
Yeah.
Herman.
Was that 5 years ago?
Well, actually, 2 years ago, I took 3 of my grandsons to climb Mount Sill there, a 14,000-foot peak, and actually took a terrible fall and ripped up my knee. But that's another story. I was trying to
we
become
aren't young
king of the
anymore.
mountain.
That's right. Now, you talk about in the book unprecedented conversion or convergence of prophecy
Yes.
in that locale.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, if that is the place where God chose to place his name there, then you have to understand that this is the place where Satan is bringing all of his power, all of his focus, all of his investment in humanity to actually squeeze out God's ability to fulfill his covenant to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to replace it with Satan's dominion. God gave man dominion in the earth. And when Satan fell from the mount of God, the scripture says that he walked on the stones of fire in the mount of God, but he was cast out. When he was cast out, God created man. He created man in his image and gave man dominion. So the significance of what happened in the garden is that Satan, through deception and seduction, stripped away the authority that God had given man in the earth, and Satan then was given that authority. From that point on, he has been laying a progressive plan to co-opt the covenant of God, to disannul God's word through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the eternal promise that he made to Abraham on with the Temple Mount and with Israel. And now Satan is seeking through mankind and the nations of the earth to assume dominion over both Jerusalem, Israel, and the Temple Mount. And to go up, it's going up because any place God is
up.
Is up.
You say pursuit of a new order.
Yes.
Okay. Now, is that set in place as we speak? Because I, in my lifetime, never thought I would see America diminish not only financially, but in such rapid, almost Mach speed as we're going with the present administration.
Right.
And he said he was going to fundamentally change America. That went right over our heads. It was like, oh, that's just a word. But there were so many that agreed with that term and understood what that meant. And now we're going in Mach speed. America, as we know it, and probably next will be somehow amending the Constitution, and on we go until we wake up one day. In fact, I heard one man that knew history so well, once the current administration was in, he says, when we wake up after the inauguration, you will not remember the America you previously knew. And the more we wake up, the more we see it's moving on. Until this happened, we as Christians always thought, why isn't America in prophecy? You know, I mean, it's like, is there some hidden code here that we're not seeing America? And the more this happens, you would be the expert behind that with spending this much time studying. Where is America?
America is in terrible decline because it's in terrible rebellion. We're in rebellion from the church house to the White House.
Yeah.
And we're in rebellion against God and against his anointed. As a matter of fact, Psalm 2, who would ever believe that the Psalms were so dramatically prophetic?
Yeah.
But here's David, Psalm 2, he said, why do the nations rage and the people imagine of vain and foolish things? They are uniting themselves and confederating together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let's cast their bonds asunder. We're going to ascend to the Mount of God. We are going to be like God. That's what's happening in America. We think that we can be like God, that we can do our own thing, that we can do what we will, from the church house to the White House. The rebellion is not just in the White House.
Yeah.
The reason we have enabled what has taken place in the White House is because for 40 to 50 years, we have actually prepared the way in God's house with rebellion.
It started in our hearts.
We've opened up a chasm. Nature abhors a vacuum, they say. And we've opened up a spiritual vacuum. God's authority no longer resides in his own house. We used to say Father knows best. We don't believe that anymore in God's house. We believe we know best. We believe psychological theory knows best. Hence the breakdown of the family in God's own house. There's a reason for these things. And so this has happened in our country. It's happening in Israel. Israel is following exactly the same pattern in the jet stream of America, even with the breakdown of the family. And so now we are, both Israel and America, the covenant people, the Jewish people, and Gentiles who were raised, a Gentile nation raised in the spirit of Egypt, excuse me, in the spirit of Israel, now are both concluded in unrighteousness. We are at the precipitous moment when all history is coming together. History and prophecy are converging and becoming congruent in preparation for the second coming of Yeshua, Jesus Christ, the Messiah. We are right there, and that's why this book, King of the Mountain. Wow.
China just came out a few days ago and said that there needs to be a new world order. Came from China, that all nations should be the same, the small nations, large nations, and if we formed a new world order, that's what would happen. So it's just amazing. As a child, I've heard about the new world order, and now
exactly
a nation like China is talking about it.
Isn't that amazing? And they also called for the de-Americanizing of the world.
Yes.
In other words, strip away the dollar as the foundation for world currency and substitute. They're trying to bring in their own currency. With 24 nations right now. So there is major shift going on in our world. And I tell you, I have in front of me here, I just brought this along, Herman and Sharon, and here is an article from the EU Times, the European Union Times, entitled World Trembles. World trembles as U.S. becomes greatest energy nation in history. World trembles. Then, from the Washington Times, Israel has oil. Let me just read an excerpt of this. It's shocking. Every once in a while, an event comes along that cannot be overstated. No hype is too much. Every bit of hyperbole is deserved. An article describing such an event slipped under the radar, using the caveat, if true, then a world-altering game changer has just taken place. Like as we know it on earth, life as we know it on earth could change. The balance of world power may be shifting. Apparently, Israel has oil. Let that sink in. Israel has oil, and the numbers are staggering. Now, the Washington Times, this is amazing information. Here's what's happened just in the last 2 years. We have both Israel, with massive gas discoveries off of its coast, now shale oil in the Elah Valley, the very place where David fought Goliath. America now coming into massive oil and gas to where we have become now the leading superpower. Look at this. New world coming, America, the energy superpower. Israel, the coming energy superpower. Now, here are the two nations that Iran looks to and calls as the great Satan and the little Satan, now being the energy superpowers of the world. I want you to put that in perspective in the context of the prophecy of Ezekiel 38 and 39. Here we have Russia, we have Iran, Persia, we have Tagarma, Turkey, we have Libya, we have the nations that are mentioned there in Ezekiel 38 and 39, plus many others, it says, will in the end times, the latter days, confederate together to attack Israel to do what? To take a spoil. Until now, there has been no spoil in Israel. Now, these two developments with America and with Israel have so positioned the world, and the Islamic world, including OPEC, rendered them almost meaningless. No more tyranny from OPEC because we don't need them anymore. We don't need their oil. Israel doesn't need their oil. Israel doesn't need Russia's oil and gas now. 40% of Russia's economy is predicated on oil and gas. Therefore, Russia is torn up. Vladimir Putin is scared to death because he's losing his power base, his financial base, in order that's going to frustrate him becoming king of the mountain.
So that's probably why he's holding hands with Iran.
And China. Just this week, the announcement came out. and Syria. This is the reason, and it's all happening right before our eyes. And what we're looking at is not only a great threat, but we're seeing the fulfillment of biblical prophecy just as the scriptures have said. And it's happening. No prognosticator, no prophet in this country or around the world would have ever in the last 10 years believed that what has just come about would come about. But God knew.
You talk about, in your book, the mount and the final moment.
Yes, we're there. You see, all of this business with petroleum.
Hasn't that been, I mean, that was said when I can remember 6 years old. The lady that took care of me in Kentucky was saying he's coming very soon.
Yes.
And now I'm 74.
Yeah.
And we're saying right here, he's coming very soon.
Well, Peter and Paul talked about that too. Very soon means different things at different times. You see, there were the end times of the latter days that began with the day of Pentecost. And then there are the end times, and then there is the day of the Lord.
Yes.
We are on the edge of the day of the Lord, the final moments of human history. That's why I wrote this book. I believe that God moved in my heart to do it, using a childhood game that 90% of the men in the whole world have played. King of the mountain or king of the hill, trying to ascend, pull the other down so they can get on top. And this is what the nations are doing. This is what they have been doing for 6,000 years. And right now, we are nearing the final movement of the nations to ascend to the heights of the north so that Satan himself can take dominion on the Temple Mount and declare himself God through his representative in a new temple.
I mean, just a little country, Israel, with all of the world focused on that, if that doesn't tell you that this is God and God alone that's orchestrating all of this. In fact, you talk about in chapter 10, the power of possession. Chapter 11, the temple and Jacob's trouble.
Yes.
Chapter 12, the end time temple. And you talk about the Muslim leader wants the temple rebuilt.
Isn't that amazing?
Now, I mean, when I read that, that shocked me.
Well, indeed. They met actually with members of the Sanhedrin, the Jewish leadership, their spiritual leadership, to talk about the rebuilding of the temple. And did you know that the Sanhedrin set out letters to 70 leaders of the world calling them to assist in rebuilding the temple because they said there will be no peace on earth until that temple is rebuilt.
Now, can't you see that just bringing them?
Wow.
It's just like your arms out and say,
Exactly.
come on in.
Exactly.
Well, we always wondered how the temple could possibly be built in that area. That is
I
amazing.
tell you, the things that we have thought never could happen,
Yeah.
all of those never could happen are exploding in front of our eyes. Never say never when God has spoken.
Wow.
Amen.
Global Islam versus God. Chapter 21. The Mahdi
Mahdi versus the Messiah.
what
The Islamic
what is
Messiah,
that?
the Mahdi, the 12th Imam,
which is like our second coming.
exactly.
Yeah.
They believe that he is coming very, very soon. That's what Ahmadinejad was announcing to the world,
Right.
saying, and they believe that they must create world chaos
In order for
that to happen.
Yes.
That's why the terrorism in the world. It's not just some isolated kind of occurrences. These are intentional occurrences developed, orchestrated purposely to lay the foundation for the Islamic 12th Imam, their Mahdi, their Messiah, and Ahmadinejad thought he was the Islamic John the Baptist to usher it in.
And interesting that he has been removed.
He's been removed, but the issue has not been removed.
No.
Latest, Erdogan in Turkey, betraying Israel, revealing 10 spies that Israel had in Iran for 60 years. Turkey and Israel have had a close relationship
Yes.
like this with intelligence. All of a sudden, Erdogan decides to betray that relationship and reveal these spies in Iran. Why did he do that? Because Mr. Erdogan believes that he and Turkey are destined to rule the world as the head of an Islamic caliphate. He is in mortal combat with Iran. He believes that a Turkish, a new Islamic caliphate will be established through Turkey, and he was willing to take that risk to betray Israel in order to make himself look like the king of the mountain in the Islamic world and to draw all the Islamic focus on him. I tell you, the nations of the earth are conspiring together. They each have their own reason why they think they should be the king of the mountain, and they use one another. They will prostitute certain issues in their own interest in order to gain the affection, gain the attention of others. Russia's doing that with the Islamic world. Mr. Putin declared that Russia was the guardian of the Islamic world. Why did he do that? Because he needs their favor in order for Russia to rule the world. Did you know that Vladimir Putin is seen by many in Russia as the John the Baptist of Russia to usher in the Messiah? Did you know that? Did you know that Russia is seen as the third Rome, and that there was a prophecy for 1,500 years that Russia would be the third and final Rome, which means that Russia and Vladimir Putin are in direct conflict and opposition to the Pope. The Vatican intends to rule the world. Did you know that just a few weeks ago, an announcement came out of Israel indicating that it seemed as if Israel was selling Jerusalem to the Vatican? Did you know that the Pope now has been given authority to sit upon Mount Zion in the tomb of David? Remember, the scripture says, he shall rule upon the throne of David. The Vatican now knows that, and they are usurping the throne of David to sit upon the Temple Mount and rule the world.
Get your copy.
Wow.
Phenomenal. Greatest book to read right here. Jesus Christ is the answer to every need you may have. Bye-bye.